someone who's been very active in the Republican Party. He is someone who's been a campaign manager. He's been very active in Florida politics. And he writes a super provocative column that appears regularly on his website, reasonablearguments.com. We are going to knock the reasonable right out of him. He is Jamie Miller, everybody. Come on. Look at you, you big Republican stud. I love it.
Thanks for having me on, Mark.
There's a lot of
what a great introduction.
Yeah, of course. There's a lot of there's a lot of partisan politics now. And one of the things I like about you is that there appears to be, and I'm just getting to know you a little bit based on your writings and talking to you a little bit, there appears to be a quality of evaluation, an objective evaluation of a situation that can really be maybe instructive to us during this highly partisan, highly politicized political discourse. I mean, when we talk about things in America now, I feel like they're so informed by the R and the D that we have trouble oftentimes getting to solutions. I'll kind of cut right to things because our time is limited, Jamie Miller, but how do you see everything coming together, the top of ticket stuff and the down ticket stuff in this election cycle?
Yeah, I mean, I've written quite a bit about how I believe that 2016 was a very unique election for Donald Trump, especially in the Rust Belt states, where there was no U.S. Senate race in Michigan, and Republican incumbents ran in both Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and won. In 2020, we had Republican incumbents in Arizona and Georgia who lost, and Democrats were running in those Rust Belt states. So I kind of look at the election as a whole, state by state. And for instance, I think Michigan is an opportunity for Donald Trump, but Ohio may be an opportunity for Kamala Harris, because there is a strong Democrat incumbent U.S. Senator running for re-election in Ohio.
This is interesting because we look at those down ballot races and we often look top of ticket to see how down ballot races will be influenced. But your point is that's the wrong way to look at it.
It's not necessarily the wrong way to look at it, but it's an indicator to me of, if I were running one of these two campaigns, of where I would think of providing additional resources. So Florida, for instance, is a pretty safe state for Trump because we have a long-term Republican incumbent U.S. Senator who has a huge money advantage, very similar to Ohio. So the Democrat there has a huge advantage. I've talked to a friend this week from Ohio, and his ads are Sherrod Jones ads are everywhere all the time, and that then may create an opening for Harris.
The emphasis on various talking points, legitimate problems in this country. I reflect on things because I think even as I mentioned problems, it's all from where you sit. And as I say, much of it's been politicized. As you look at the most effective things, because you have been involved in so many different kinds of races, and you really do have to focus when you're managing a campaign on messaging. What's been the most effective Republican message this election cycle?
I think border security is still resonating with the public because it's falling in line. More and more people are seeing the border insecurity as part of the jobs and inflation, which is leading to Biden-Harris's really horrific right track, wrong track numbers. I think the Real Clear Politics had 26% of Americans say that America's on the right track and 56% say wrong track. And to me, that's the number one polling question in any poll is right track, wrong track.
But Jamie, isn't it true that right track, wrong track and approval rating numbers in the new America, I mean, this again, now that it seems as though we've reframed the discourse with more of these rhetorical Molotov cocktails that they get thrown back and forth, the right track, wrong track game it now will never really reach the kind of comfortable threshold that should make any incumbent feel okay.
Well, I think, well, no, maybe no incumbent should feel okay. I do think that there are, in this election, most people are baked in mostly around Trump, I think. I've also written, you know, if you want a partisan comment, I've also written there's three stages of Harris. They are excitement, relief, and regret. And I think that's kind of where we are in the campaign, is in the relief. You know, there was excitement when she was first nominated, or first one that, you know, was the apparent nominee. And now it's like, oh, well, at least she's not Joe Biden, and at least she's not Donald Trump. And so we'll see if the regret if number one, I'm right about the regret stage. And then number two, if it happens before the election or after.
Well, it's going to be a close election, but you have to concede this. She's someone who closed the gap very quickly. Now, you're probably going to tell me, well, that was the pent-up frustration with Joe Biden and the resignation that Democrats had to him, and then all of a sudden a great outlet shows up, Kamala Harris, and that's where that goes. Would you? I'm guessing that would be your take on it.
Most polling has what we call regressed to the mean, right? So, you know, about where Joe Biden was prior to the debate is about where Harris is today, and most of that is baked in about whether you love or hate Donald Trump.
Right. He has a ceiling, though, doesn't he, Jamie Miller?
There's no question. You know, I have friends who are big Trump fans, right? And I'm a Republican. I support Donald Trump, but you know, he needed to expand the electorate. I don't know that he's done that yet. I was hoping he would do that with his vice presidential nominee. I think there's people on the Democratic side who would have liked to see Harris expand her electorate. So both campaigns kind of did very similar things by leaning into the right and the left, which, as we were talking about beforehand, is kind of one of the problems we are facing as a nation, and why my blog is called Reasonable Arguments. Part of what I'm trying to do, I'm partisan. I'm a right of center person. I don't run from that. I don't deny that. But I'm trying to bring the discussion into, and thank you for having me on your show, into an area where people who disagree can do so civilly and with honor and with respect for one another.
As a supporter of Donald Trump and his aspirations to become president again, what do you see in him that sparks your support?
Well, for me, it is about the U.S. Supreme Court, for me personally. And anyone he appoints, in my opinion, is going to be more conservative than anyone Harris appoints. And to me, that's the ball game.
And the part of that conservative, not to interrupt, I'm sorry, but the part of that conservative judicial agenda that you're drawn to is what in general?
You know, I think it's all of it. It's certainly not the abortion issue, but I think it is more, you know, it is conservative issues along the lines of, I'm trying to think of one right this second, but we had, you know, the Dodd decision to me was a state rights issue, and I think we've gotten really far away from that. I know one of the fights that you and I could pick, I know that you're for the popular vote, and I am for the Electoral College, and it's because that, you know, the reason why we have a U.S. Senate is to represent the states' rights. And so each state has, you know, we used to elect our senators from our state legislators or legislatures, and and the House was elected from the people. And so there was a balance there. We changed that a little bit. And so I can see where people who would agree that we should go with a popular vote, but we certainly wouldn't have presidential candidates caring about rural areas if, in fact, we did that. So I like the balance of the Electoral College.
I mean, it's a disproportionate though, imbalance, really, isn't it, Jamie? And when you have North Dakota, South Dakota with the same number of senators that California has, you can feel the same sense that you might have felt had you been in those rural regions unrepresented. You can feel that in this state of California, where we essentially don't have the voice that North Dakota and South Dakota and Wyoming have.
That's not necessarily true, because you have the votes in the House that give you that voice. And so,
yeah, but you mentioned Senate. That's what I was talking
this
about.
Yes, sir. I agree with you. But when you collectively add the House and the Senate together, California outweighs, these other states. And so it gives a little bit of balance. But this has been a discussion we've had since prior, when our founding fathers were still breathing. And I don't know that you and I are going to solve it today, but it's always a fun discussion. But I do believe in that balance does help give a voice to more rural states.
I'm not trying to, continue to circle back around to, to a throwdown here, but I really did want to, because you mentioned Supreme Court first, and this is a problematic decision, the states' rights default position that is taken. It's sadly at the cost of so many freedoms associated with being a woman in America. And I just wonder, and obviously I'm coming at it from that perspective, but I'm just wondering, a party, the Republicans, who claim to be for so many freedoms, get the government off our back, how you can be so squarely in a camp that takes away so many freedoms from women.
Yeah, for that particular decision, I don't think it's a woman's issue as much as it is, if you read the decision, it doesn't take rights away from women. It gives them back to the states, for the states to make the decision. And abortion is not an issue that I have throughout my career, staked a flag. That's not a hill that I've championed one way or the other. For the most part, I'm pro-life for personal and emotional reasons. And I know that very many people are pro-choice for personal and emotional reasons. And I don't believe that I'm right for my personal and emotional reasons. And someone else is wrong. But I also don't believe that they are right and I'm wrong. So,
but it sounds to me, and then I'm going to move on to another Supreme Court issue. It has nothing to do with this. But it sounds to me, if I really pressed you and we were deciding, you would say, Mark, it's fine. People should be able to do whatever they want, and the legislature and the states. In this case, when you say knocked it down to the states, it's the states' rights, that you get the government, state or feds, off the back of the people and that decision.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. One thing that I've written about in the past is that most hospitals in most states, I won't say that this is a definite, but most hospitals in most states will not give a death certificate to a fetus under the age of 20 weeks. The fetus has to gestate to 20 weeks or more to get a death certificate. And that's a long-standing, 20 weeks has been a date that's been a long-standing date in hospitals. And so to me, if we're going to quote, follow the science, I'm not sure who came up with the 20 weeks or why or whatever, but I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist. And so, that seems to be a line in the sand that everybody seemed to agree on for a very long time. And so for me, I kind of say, okay, if you're before that, that's 5 months. That should scratch most people's itch. Of course, I think you and I would be in what I like to call violent agreement that, when you start talking about the life of a mother, sometimes those problems aren't known until the 6th or 7th month. And I don't think government should be making those choices.
The other thing that the Supreme Court really has done, to me, it's been an activist court. The Chevron deference decision was, again, settled law, but just to do the reducto on it here, in essence, I think it's the beginning, and this is happening at the judicial level, and that's probably the place where it can be done most effectively in this country, especially with Congress essentially ground to a halt, inability to do anything. The dismantling of regulatory power of a lot of these various government agencies, in this case, the EPA. And I, of course, come at it from the standpoint of, well, I'm not saying that every decision that comes out of the EPA I definitely would agree with. Maybe I would, but I know that there are experts there, there's scientists there, there are trained minds to evaluate things like the purity of water, air, soil, and poisons that can be dumped into all of those things that would destroy life and create any number of problems in our society. Why not let those trained scientists and those trained minds make those decisions as opposed to a legislator? What you see on the part of the Supreme Court and the agenda that I've noticed, and you have, I'm sure, as well, is an insanely business-friendly court that is pretty much allowing the regulatory structure that's held them to account for any number of issues, from consumer protections to, as I say, environmental protections. That regulatory structure is getting undone. Are you good with that?
Yeah, I mean, the pendulum swings, and so for you to say that there's definitive law that's supposed to last forever, that's not what our system is based upon. If I think you and I would also be in violent agreement that slavery was wrong and should never have happened in our country of free people, and but yet that was law. That was law from the beginning, and we changed it as it should have been changed. So, the pendulum does swing, and we're at a point today where I can agree with you also that it seems that most of our politicians are, screaming to the edges instead of embracing the middle, and I'm not sure that is good for us long term.
The screaming that the politicians do, and you as a longtime consultant and someone who's seen it unfold, it has to be kind of weird for you to see that it's really now about increasingly personal branding. You get these firebrands, to use the word brand again, these sort of flamethrowers,
Sure.
like Marjorie Taylor Greene, the Lauren Boeberts of the world, even Ted Cruz does a bunch of it, where, they're basically just building their personal political brand as opposed to really trying to get any progress. You seem like a considered guy, and I'm wondering if that frustrates you as much as it does me.
I'm probably going to say something that you're going to think is contradictory, but when you think about it, it won't be. And you might agree with one piece and not the other. So I am somebody who believes that from very early in my career, that a politician should be able to take as much money from whoever they want as long as they report it, right? And so the Citizens United case changed that, and I think that has upended our system so that we now have a system where the infrastructure of our political parties is in decay. And I know that a lot of people, conventional wisdom would be, hey, political parties in decay is a good thing. But the problem that Citizens United has now created is that each one of the people you mentioned, and I could make a list of Democrats who are in that as well. I don't know that that's valuable to our conversation, but that they have all become a political party unto themselves. And they're not responsible to anyone except for their own personal donors who are, and it's guilty, the guilt, it belongs to everybody, right? And so everybody is guilty of it. Both sides are guilty of it. And, we need to, as citizens, say, come up with a reasonable election reform that doesn't say, oh, let's use tax dollars to run elections, but maybe something as simple as let's do away with these third party groups, but allow if somebody wants to stand by a billionaire and take $10 million, they should, like I'm doing on your show, and I'm not getting paid by anyone to be on your show, but it's they should be able to stand next to that billionaire and explain to the American people or their voters why they took $10 million from that person. And now all that money is hidden. And I don't think this hidden money on both sides is beneficial to us in the long term.
Well, you're on to what I think is the whole game, but we kind of disagree on, as you predicted, on the whole game. I would absolutely get the money out of politics. I wouldn't allow these huge corporate donors or billionaires to buy the system, because Jamie, they do get something for that donation, right? You'd agree? I mean, I'm giving $10 million to this campaign. I do expect something in return.
Yeah, I don't want to. I have been a part of people who have made donations and been told no. I mean, it's not a. I don't believe either side, and I put Democrats and Republicans in the same boat because they take, each individual takes money from contradictory sources, and so when that issue comes up,
You're saying it all zeroes out.
The politician still has to look one of them in the eye, or two of them, or however many it is, in the eye, and tell them bad news. And so I'm of the belief that you're not going to take money out of politics. I just don't. It's always been there. It's is it more prevalent today? Yes. The problem for me today is that it is hidden, and the public is it's hidden under great names of America is beautiful, right?
Sure.
Political committee, and so or keep America beautiful, or whatever it is,
Right.
So
it's papered over with a lot of patriotic branding.
You pass money from here to there, and at the federal level, candidates' campaigns cannot coordinate with political committees, but there's certainly anything that's in the public domain is in the public domain. So that's how people put polling on Twitter, so
Sure.
And things like that. As long as it's in the public domain, it's there. And so we have this this issue of trying to of people not really knowing who the money's coming from, and then you add into another layer of foreign millionaire and billionaires who set up American companies and funnel foreign money through American companies to, and I'm not saying one side does it, one doesn't. Both sides.
Oh no, absolutely. Both sides are washing money. The whole system's washing money.
So
yeah.
So, but that to me is a real problem when you have foreign interests affecting our domestic elections, and so.
So you wouldn't want the president of the United States taking foreign money, am I right?
I don't think any politician should take foreign money.
So if there was evidence that Donald Trump took foreign money, your guy, like this $10 million, it looks like it traces back to the Egyptians, you would be, I assume that you're repulsed by that.
I am repulsed by it, but I'm also repulsed by Harris and Biden taking millions of dollars from American companies that are controlled by foreign owners. So it's not one side or the other. I appreciate you trying to paint me into a corner. I hope I didn't stay there, but
no, you're very good, and the problem is that our system is corrupt on both sides, in my judgment.
It's equally corrupt, but
right,
it's corrupt.
Okay. Oh no, exactly. I'm not. And then it comes down to some ideology.
Corruption is the wrong word. People are corruption makes it sound like people are doing things that are against the law. I think both sides are working within the laws that we've written, and the public has at some level accepted. We don't show up to our legislative offices with pitchforks and torches saying, "Oh, change the campaign finance laws." Right? We get excited about other things.
On campaign financing, there's enough wiggle room for both the Democrats and Republicans to get away with a lot. I'm not. This is to be continued because I don't want. I want our first date to be really to end really well. So I don't. I do think that there was corruption and laws broken under your guys' last administration, and you may think that, hey, there are laws being broken under my guys' administration to extend Joe Biden. But
quite frankly, Mark, what I'd rather talk about are the solutions.
Sure.
Let's look forward and say, my side really wants to drag. When I go onto a conservative show, they want to drag me into election fraud. And I tell them, no, I want to talk about ensuring to our children, grandchildren, and the rest of the world that we have free, fair, and transparent elections. So let's talk about that in the future, because rehashing the past doesn't help. And so I hope our next conversation is that we can build upon this and talk about solutions for the future.
Well, I'd love to do that. But in between insulting each other,
I didn't feel insulted at all. Like, did I insult you?
No, I'm totally teasing. Jamie Miller, again, author, American Speeches That Changed History. His Substack is Reasonable Argument. You can find him at reasonableargument.com. Well, he's pleasant enough. He has that whole Southern charm thing that comes with that Florida rural-ish background that I learned he had as growing up. You really are, you're lovely to spend some time with us. You'll always be treated civilly here, I promise. And I do look forward to another conversation as this election cycle continues. So be well, my friend.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate the opportunity.
Jamie Miller, everybody. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.